Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to episode 36 of the Memorial Memo KSR's Kentucky Women's Basketball Podcast. Today is, there's a lot on the table for today, right? There is your usual Kentucky women's basketball talk that we are going to do, but today is, just a very weird day, right? Um, I'm gonna talk. I tweeted out earlier. Um, I'm not gonna. Everyone's seen the events that's happened today. I'm just gonna talk about that briefly because I just don't feel like I can sit on here, and do this podcast with a good conscience and not briefly kind of bring it up, right? Um, for me, man, um, it's tough because I have, I usually try to keep my personal life personal and whatnot. I have a brother in the army. I have several veterans in my family. My father, shout out to my dad, if you're watching. He was in the Navy for a few years. Like for me, this stuff means something to me. Um, and I don't really know a lot about the Charlie Kirk guy in particular. I've seen, like, you see the clips, right, where he's like, he goes around to these campuses and he respectfully debates people, whether you agree with him or not. And I just feel like, how in society can we not do that without those kinds of repercussions? How can we not feel like we can, even if we disagree, talk about whatever, and then that kind of thing happens? And I saw, just a little bit before we got on, I didn't know about it, but again, until I saw it, but there was that shooting in Colorado at that, I think it was a high school too. Like, this stuff is just, if we can't even talk about, if we can't even talk to each other about something we all disagree about, then, you know what I mean? Like, we're already not doomed, I guess. You know what I mean? Like I said, I didn't want to ramble on it too long. I just feel like we had this, like, it's heartbreaking. Truly, my condolences go out to everyone. Kind of. Greg's comments. Words cannot describe how you feel, and I mean, it's words can't really describe the situation. It's just, it sucks a lot. Um, Again, you just pray for, especially because you think about, he's a husband. He's 31 years old, right? Two kids. Like, it's really heartbreaking. There's a video. I think he was on like Fox News or something, and like, after he's done, like, his daughter's like patiently waiting behind set, and she like runs up to him, gives him a hug. Like, that's heartbreaking, right? Um, I just can't imagine being in that situation, but just as a society, we have to, we just got to learn, man, to, you just got to learn to be able to, like, talk with each other, even if we disagree. Like, you got to learn just to be able to talk with each other, figure things out, and move on. Anyway, again, I wanted to keep that brief because, again, this is a women's basketball podcast. I respect that. There's Everyone is going to talk about this for the next week or so, but I just, in good conscience, cannot get on here and start talking without just airing some, like, brief thoughts without getting too far into it. Anyway, so without further ado, um, this past weekend, the Ole Miss football game, that game sucked, but it was a big weekend for Kentucky women's basketball recruiting. There were a number of visitors at the Ole Miss game this past weekend. I reported it on KSR Plus not that long ago, actually. I guess literally the other day when it happened. You have Jaden McClain, who is a 2029 prospect out of Ryle. She's like a unicorn, basically. I mean, 6'6", and she's 14 years old, and she goes to Ryle, and it's just like, oh, like, where'd you come from? You know what I mean? So it's really interesting to to see her. You have some 2028 prospects, most of which top 25. Of course, ESPN only has a top 25 for 2028 right now, so it's really kind of hard to say. But you have Dakari Blankumsey. That is literally Dakari Blankumsey. You look at her last name, that's literally what it is, right? Number 9 prospect in 2028. Janiah Hargrave, number 14 prospect in 2028. Aaron Thomas, who Kentucky offered earlier in the summer. I actually got to watch her run for Roses in Louisville. She was on campus visiting, number 22 kid in the class. And then you have Taylor Stanfield and Nariah Goddard, who are 2 other really talented kids in that 28 class. It's clear that Kentucky is kind of shifting their focus from 26 to 27 and 28, and even a little bit 2029, right, with Jaden McClain specifically. Like Kentucky, and this is kind of with the 2026 class, I think Kentucky is actually about done, as much as that may suck to say, because like Kentucky got off to like a super hot start. But, believe it or not, when you sign 2 top 10 kids that fast, sometimes it can not backfire, because you would take that over anything, but sometimes it does have its cons. There are certain schools, SEC schools, from what I've heard, in large part, that have just kind of been negatively recruiting against Kentucky, kind of just saying, hey man, you're not going to get any playing time over there, or blah blah blah. We can get whatever the situation is. Or whatever it is that they're saying. The fact is, there's been some kind of like recruiting against Kentucky a little bit. And, of course, you have commitments from Madden Greenway and Savvy Swords. I've heard Kentucky has kind of stepped on the gas pedal, trying to potentially land commitments from Emily McDonald and Mimi Thero. Now, obviously, with Mimi Thero, we all know the connection there, right? Adu played at Kentucky. Mimi, she's been on an unofficial to Kentucky before, when Kyra Elzy was on the staff. But with Emily McDonald, she is actually high school teammates with Savvy Swords at Long Island Lutheran in New York. So that definitely helps there. Kentucky's been in that recruitment for a while. Mimi's recruitment is pretty open. I know she's visited Memphis. Of course, that's where her dad played, Almami. I think she visited Clemson. Clemson's been a school that's been on her for a while. You have Mississippi State is another program that's in there. She just released a top 12, I believe, and Kentucky is in the mix. I know Louisville's in there too. For Emily McDonald, I haven't heard a ton, but I have heard that Kentucky and South Carolina are kind of the 2 programs maybe to watch for her. Sources have indicated to KSR that Thero still intends to visit, and I haven't figured out a date. When I talked to her earlier in the summer, she didn't have a date either, but she said September. And typically they align these dates with home football games. So the only September date left for a home football game, I'm pretty sure, is this weekend against Eastern Michigan. So my gut would say that Mimi Thero would be visiting this weekend. That's not scoop or confirmed. That's just like a guess at the moment. I guess we'll kind of figure out when the moment comes. I think ideally, they'd like to get a few freshmen a year, maybe 2, 3 to 4, if it works out, right? Like you want to get as many high-level freshmen as you can. I say as many as you can, but it's 2, 3, 4, somewhere in that range. But they're not, the staff, from what I understand, is not willing to overpay or promise playing time to a recruit, right? When they have this insurance policy called the transfer portal, just waiting. So that's something to keep in mind. I think Kentucky, at the end of the day, they're going to have one of the better 2026 classes, maybe the best 2026 class. And it just kind of sucks to be like, well, they got these 2 commitments pretty early. Can they get 1 more? Can they get 2 more? It's just, we'll see. But like Olivia Vukosa, Kentucky is not in the running for. She released the top 5 that didn't include Kentucky. You have, let's see, like Whitley Rogers, a lot of players that Kentucky's kind of backed off on because they either just don't fit culturally, NIL wise, whatever the reason. But Mimi Theo and Emily McDonald specifically, I'm not saying Kentucky's going to land those two, but I'm saying those are two players that Kentucky, from what I've heard, have kind of pushed on the gas pedal to get. Now, I also wanted to talk about potential starting lineup because I've been doing some talking with people, and I've been fortunate enough to been to like a practice or two this summer. Just let me go ahead and say the potential starting lineup that if you made me bet on it, if you said Phoenix, you know, put a how down payment for a house on it, who's starting for Kentucky against Morehead State on November 3rd, I would tell you Tony Morgan at point guard, and I'm gonna go weird with the positions here, but just hear me out. Tony Morgan at point guard, Tiani Key at small forward or power forward, excuse me, Claire Strack at center. So that leaves open your shooting guard and your small forward, right? From what I have picked up, what has been indicated to me, I believe Jordan Obi will start at the 2 and Amelia Hassett will start at the 3, giving you a starting lineup of Tony Morgan, Jordan Obi, Amelia Hassett, Tiani Key, Claire Strack. That is pretty clearly the most experienced lineup you could have. All seniors, including actually, no, I'll take that back. Claire Strack is a junior, but reigning SEC Defensive Player of the Year, best player on the team. You know what I mean? Including Jordan Obi, who is a super senior. From what I know, Tony Morgan, Tiani Key, Claire Strack are always locks at their respective positions. I think Jordan Obi has kind of been a starter lock too. It's just a matter of if they wanted to play her at the 2 or the 3. But sources, I've talked to a lot of people kind of around the program. It's been indicated to me that there's a strong likelihood that Jordan Obi starts at the 2. I think that's something, they kind of wanted to see what her development would look like this offseason. Really since she's got here, from the time she got here last offseason to now, just what that looks like. And I think they're like, oh, wait a minute, she's a little bit more athletic than maybe we even thought she may be. Maybe she's better as a 2. And it's also maybe just a case that Amelia Hassett has been really impressive this summer. Excuse me. From what I know, sounds like she's just a lot more confident, my gosh, my chest. Anyway, she's a lot more confident in her game. Again, it's not like she's being asked to play less minutes necessarily, and maybe that'll just happen by default. But, Kenny has emphasized like, hey, we don't want to put as big of a load on you. We don't want to ask you to do everything. Like he said it before. She had to hit threes, rebound, guard the best player, all these things. And it's like, okay, instead of asking to do X, Y, and Z to perfection, okay, maybe you can just do X and Y pretty good. And, we'll let Clara Strack handle Z, or let Tony Morgan handle Z. You know what I mean? So it sounds to me that Amelia Hassett has been just really impressive, something to monitor for sure. And it sounds like the staff is super confident in the bench too. Lexi Blue, who I can tell you for a fact has impressed the staff. Asia Boone, another one I can tell you for a fact that has impressed the staff. Dominica Prova, Kaylin Carroll, the same thing. Josie Gilvin provides experience, great shooter, great defensive player. That's what you're going to want in a player like her. Those players right there, Lexi Blue, Dom Prova, Josie Gilvin, Asia Boone, Kaylin Carroll, can all provide key minutes. And I think, again, it's kind of up to them to kind of carve out, okay, where are they in the rotation? It's up to them to be like, okay, am I going to play 5 minutes a game or, 20, 25 minutes a game kind of situation. It's just you got to earn your minutes. I've heard it with Kaylin Carroll specifically. Okay, you're going to have to earn your minutes playing defense. And I imagine that kind of thing kind of applies to, everyone in that boat. Okay, we all know you're good shooters, good athletes. earn your minutes by doing the little things right. And that'll be interesting to monitor. So that starting lineup of Tony Morgan, Jordan Obi, Amelia Hassett, Tiani Key, Claire Strack, one of the better starting lineups in the country, right? And then you have a pretty good bench. Easily, I think maybe the best front court in the country, period, between Key and Strack. I'm trying to think off the top, like UCLA, they'll have a good front court. UConn, of course, but like other than that, is it Kentucky? I think you could definitely make the argument for that to be the case. It's just nice to hear that there's a lot that the staff can do, but I think they've kind of sort of started to crunch down a little bit on what it is that they want to do, right? They've kind of sort of figured out, okay, we know who we want to start. It's just a matter of where can we fit the pieces. Again, that starting lineup, again, one more time, Tony Morgan, Jordan Obi, Amelia Hassett, Tiana Key, Clara Streck. That is what I've heard may be the most likely scenario heading into the season. In other news, there's a new practice facility. Now, you may ask, Phoenix, isn't that supposed to be for the men's team? First of all, I don't think that is set in stone. I've kind of talked to people, and like the wording in the press releases, I think they even changed it maybe. It's kind of a weird situation where like they may use it, they may not. They may just stick with Joe Kraft. Regardless, I don't think there is any real negative to this for the women's basketball program. Again, from what I've been talking to people, it sounds like the women's basketball team, as well as like volleyball and I think gymnastics, like the women's sports programs, sounds like they may be opting, that they could opt to, okay, men's basketball, you go use your new facility. We'll turn Joe Kraft into this like women's sports exclusive haven, which would be one of the there is no other that from what I've dug and tried to find. I don't think there's another school in the country that could say that they have like a pure women's sports complex kind of like that, especially with it connecting to a memorial, right, where women's basketball, volleyball, gymnastics, where they compete. I think, again, there's a possibility that the women could use the new facility. And again, that's also just like, if that's the route the women's basketball team goes. And again, I think this all kind of comes down to preference, right? It's whatever Kenny Brooks wants to, I'm pretty sure. So that's good. But there's a possibility they use that new facility, which if that's the case, then like, oh, look, that's just a new investment for basketball. And kind of all of this really is to say that recruiting should only continue to pick up from here. The recruiting for Kentucky women's basketball, it's, you've heard Kenny say it, but it's a true thing. They've been able to get in the door for kids that they just weren't able to get in before when he was at Virginia Tech, right? Like Kenny Brooks can now go out and recruit these top 5, top 10 kids. He can now go out and get 2 top 10 kids for the first time in school history. And that's only going to continue to get better. You may think I'm joking, but genuinely, you'd be surprised. The reputation of the men's basketball program, to me, I feel like when you talk about, UK men's basketball, women's basketball, you may think, okay, well, do they really have anything? Like, how much do they have to do with each other? Well, if you all recall to like that Big Blue Madness where Kenny does his entrance and him and Mark Pope, they do the hug or whatever. Their whole point was we're going to make UK basketball one big brand. It's not, yes, it technically is men's and then women's, but it's UK basketball under an umbrella. And that is something that both coaches have been committed to. I've seen, I posted on social media, we wrote an article about it, like Malachi Marino running, or Jaden McClain running into Malachi Marino at the UK football game. They talk, take a picture. I've seen, I forget which UK assistant. I want to say Alvin Brooks. I forget. he posted or liked something about a women's basketball recruit. Just little things like that, right? Um, the reputation of the men's program helps on the women's side just as much. Like people are like, oh, Kentucky basketball, like that's a big deal. Okay, now I'm gonna listen to what you have to say. Oh, and by the way, the women's coach Kenny Brooks, yeah, he went to a Final Four and point guard guru, players in the W, all this kind of stuff, right? Like recruiting, it's only gonna get better. It's only going to continue to rise. It's only going to continue. Again, like you set a record by, or you set a new standard by getting 2 top 10 kids, and there's no reason why that can't continue under Kenny Brooks. We're gonna go and call this episode here. A bit of a shorter episode, I know. First of all, it's timing. Timing is a little, hard to come by. Like I know right now, UK volleyball's in the top 10 matchup. Like soon as we all get off here, I'm sure we're all about to go head over to ESPN and catch that. But life is busy. We're in the heat of football season, so we're trying to squeeze in what we can when we can. But it wouldn't be the Memorial Memo unless I said to subscribe to the KSR YouTube channel before we get out of here. Again, 50.9K subscribers. Help us get, to 55K, 60K. Help us get to the next milestone. Steven does a lot of tremendous work for us, and we can't thank him enough for what he does. So if not for me, reward Steven for his hard work and subscribe to the KSR YouTube channel, where you will be able to find the next episode of the Memo. Sometimes I just stutter over my words. When you'll be able to find the next episode of the Memorial Memo. That sounds better. Where I will catch you guys next time.